Hello, everyone. Welcome to our February's Fireside Chat. We're here with Dominika Rogala, who is an engineering manager at Intel. And we're going to discuss today about leading engineering teams successfully, all of the practical tips and everything you might find useful if you're climbing the ladder or you're currently into an engineering leadership position. Before we start, most of you already know Adeva is a remote network of tech professionals. Our vision is to enable work without boundaries. And the purpose of this event is connected to that, like enabling people all across the world to learn from leaders in the industry, regardless of where they're located. Very important. You can ask all of your questions on Slido. The link my colleagues will share it in the comments. You can check it there. Make sure to share your questions once we start, and then at the end we'll circle back to it and try to address as many as possible. And now, without further ado, Dominika, welcome, and thanks for accepting my invite.
Hello, Katerina. Nice to talk to you this afternoon. Yeah, I can't wait for discussion and what questions people may come up with.
Great. Before we start, can you just give a brief introduction to our audience so we know who we're talking with?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Dominika. I'm an engineering manager in Intel, and I worked also in some other companies before. I started my engineering career as an electronic engineer, so like hands-on work with some medical equipment, and in managing teams, I focus mostly on like people, and also development, not only like teams, but also mine. So like I have this growth imperative. If we are not growing, I'm not happy.
Nice. I love that. As a start for our discussion, I know this wasn't planned, but you know the world is in a very difficult situation right now, and all of our hearts are with people in Ukraine. Most of us who are working remotely, we all have someone from Ukraine in our teams, or we have been working with them in the past, so it can feel personal. And I think it's good to discuss a bit about working, managing teams in difficult times, or just supporting your teammates when they are in a tough situation. Maybe you can share something from your experience, like how each of us can, I know we can't help, but support our colleagues and be there for them.
Yeah, this is really like difficult on so many levels. Like for me, it's hard even to focus on anything valuable all day. And we had difficult times before, even with COVID. It was hard, and it played really bad on mental health of a lot of people. But now I can't imagine how hard it is. So it's also like personally for me, it's difficult sometimes to think like, okay, we will be talking like nothing happened. That's good that you bring this up. So there are two perspectives I have for that. One is that we like should find support for the people we work with who are affected in any way, because of course there are people who live there, but there are also people who have families there or just care deeply about the situation, and all of them can be very, very deeply moved, which will affect the way they work. And what we can do as teammates or leaders is just like thoughtfully asked what they need, because every person needs something else. Be open to supporting them if they want a day off or a couple days off, just to think through the events, see what happens, and just take a deep breath. Depending on the company you work in, it might be helpful to point them where they can get like support from the company, because I know at Intel, for example, we have psychological help that you can get anytime as a, like, let's say, benefit. But there are many things you can do. So just if you don't know what's there in your company, you can find out and point it out. But mainly make place for people to talk to you about what they feel about. And this is one thing. And second thing is take care of yourself. because if you're super stressed and you don't feel well, you won't be able to support your people. So this is like basic stuff, but this is super important.
Right. And I think it's also important not to push people to talk or ask for help. Like if they don't feel like it, we should give them an environment where when they can pass on whatever we're offering.
Yep.
Okay. Um, Continuing with the discussion as it was planned, can you share a bit about your beginnings in the industry? You mentioned you started as electrical engineer. Like, how did you get to this point, being an engineering manager?
Oh, I started with some super exciting stuff. We were making medical equipment, like super innovative ideas, but the team started growing and we needed someone to like take care of all of that. I was one of the first engineers in the company. I was already leading some projects, some efforts. So I kind of naturally came up as a leader and I agreed, okay, let's do it. And for some times I was dividing my time between engineering work and managing work, but then it was no longer enough. So we decided to make it like one way or another. And yeah, I said goodbye to my beloved hardware engineering and started management. And since then, I'm always in management roles in different companies.
Uh, Something specific from the experience that, when you were working as an engineer, you had less on your plate, probably. I mean, maybe not less, but less stress, definitely. So there are things, especially when developers take on more leadership roles and they start working as manager or team leads. Meetings come up, they need to focus on split their focus sometimes on the hands-on work and the management work or leading teams. So what was your experience in this area? How did you balance it, and what are some tips for people who are going through it right now?
Uh, it of course depends how this looks like in your company, because like what I think usually works best is if you separate it totally, and when you start to be a manager, you stop doing engineering work. And we can talk a little bit more why in a moment. But it's good to know how it looks in your place, and if you're really into that. So what I see a lot of people struggle with is, okay, I want to be a manager, but I love this engineering part. I want to do both. And most people I know struggle very hard with that. And the longer you do it, the more frustrated you get. And I had the same. I was like working part this, part this. I tried to divide my calendar in days or in hours, and it never worked very well. But I still thought like I'm really doing well. I'm supporting my team in these difficult parts of engineering tasks, and I'm taking care of management. And then one day I was like, okay, now we have to like decide. And I said to my team, okay, from now on, I'm only a manager. I won't be participating in these technical tasks anymore. And after a week, my favorite teammate came to me and he said, finally, Dominika, this was so good. Because anytime I want to ask you something, I don't have to think if you're coding at the moment. And I disturb you. Like, I don't remember all the reasons he gave, but he was so relieved that finally it's 100% sure that I'm a manager and no one else. And yeah, that it really made a big difference for them. And I talked to many managers, and this is really something common. But I think it's really hard for people who are moving from engineering roles to manager roles to just let go of this engineering part. So this is something to think through when you're taking this decision, if you want to go to this
Right.
manager's path. There's a great book by Camille Fourier. It's called The Manager's Path. So it's really, if you're just thinking about starting this path or you're a CEO, you'll find something really great there. Yeah, and also this dilemma is also in this book,
Mhm.
so I recommend it.
Nice. And what are some other things that you wish you knew, or you would like to share with people? You know, that they need to know before they start taking on some leadership role. For example, apart from you know, you need to focus on it 100%, and you need to give up hands-on work.
Yeah, so it would be good to talk with some people who work in similar role in your organization to know how the week looks like, what the day is, or how the day is organized, because like you may feel it's super interesting, and then you talk with people and they make you feel like, no, you're sitting in meetings every day. I don't want to do that. But on the other hand, you may listen to some strategic meetings, some things like that, and you're like, yeah, I want to take more decisions, more responsibility. So really talking with different people who work the way you plan to start working would help a lot. And getting to know what will be on your plate. So okay, we have meetings, but what does it mean? How in your organization these meetings are prepared? How much of this work you do with some other managers, and some of the work you will have to do on your own. Also think what makes you satisfied at work, and will you find it on this path? Because when you work with code, you see lines of code, or you see that the tests passed, or I don't know, someone
You
asks
have
you, or
direct feedback.
yeah, you have direct feedback. With when you start working as a manager, it's more like you have to find your own ways to prove to yourself that you're doing a lot
You're
of
doing a good
good
job,
work.
right? How does your usual day look like? What are the things that, as an engineering manager, you need to do?
Yeah, like I have mostly meetings. Just one disclaimer, because I forgot to do that in the intro, because now I'm like not working on daily basis because I'm pregnant and I'm on medical leave because of pregnancy. So if anyone from my team is watching us, hello guys, I miss you very much. Haven't seen them for I think like 2 months now. So like my everyday may be not very managerial
How was it
now.
like before?
Yeah. So one super fun and great thing we had were managers coffees every day, uh, that were not dedicated to any project talks, just to see each other for I think 15 minutes, talk about what's on your mind, and connect. And I think this is super important when you're a manager, to have your team as well, like other managers working together, to feel we are together on the same target, like to share ideas or problems that you have, because you won't have it like when you work in a team that's delivering a product, that you have dailies or some other way of connecting with people, and it's a little more tricky when you're manager. So in
Mhm.
our normal week, we would have every day this manager's coffee. That was a nice point. I had quite a lot of one-on-ones because I like to make them every 2 weeks. So I think I had like 2 days almost full of one-on-ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like almost full. Yeah, maybe not full. Uh, some strategics, so planning the work to be done on my own and together with our closest managers team. Well, like usual stuff, I'd say.
Just so that people, like you mentioned, if you're like talking to someone in your team to see what their day looks like. So I wanted them to hear from your perspective what your day
Yeah,
looks
of course.
like.
So what I liked to do was at least once a week had a really big like 4 hours, for example, block for like my own work, not preparing for some meeting or preparing for whatever, just time to sit back and take a look on broader area and think, okay, what we should do next, like or what are the needs of my team I'm not seeing every day. So this is also important because it makes you feel like you have control and not only going day to day with tasks that come, because sometimes there are important things that you won't notice if you don't like take a little time for yourself. So this is what I really like to do.
And I think it's very easy to miss to do that, because when the work takes you over and you need to focus on, I don't know, deadlines and meetings and all of that, it's just day to days, and you forget about the bigger picture and everything that you can focus.
Yeah, and there's always something going on. And the bigger things you deliver, like the bigger organization, the more important projects you do, the more is happening every day. So you have meetings that are like all the time, but you have also ad hoc to solve some problem.
Mm.
And then it's like, oh, this milestone is coming in like 3 months, but you have no time to focus. Okay, is there any risk? So this risk analysis, for example, is something that can be very helpful to do just because you want from time to time, and not because it's like 2 weeks towards the milestone.
Right. So how do you make sure, like, there are no, I mean, I don't know if you can make sure, but for example, to avoid meetings that could have been emails, or to work with other stakeholders to say, okay, we don't need this meeting, we can sync up offline.
This is like I love these questions. This question also, I've seen many organizations trying to limit the meetings, and uh, some are more successful, some are less successful. I think if we are, because this is this cliche about like a meeting that should have been an email. We have a problem with emails usually because we have so many of them. There's sometimes like you don't treat them as seriously as you should. So maybe should start with limiting emails, and then if we have this communication fixed, then really they could work instead of meetings. So that's one thing. Second thing is to maybe yeah, like use the even sometimes it's easier to chat in whatever tool you're using, like Slack, Teams, whatever, about the topic before you decide something. I also heard voices from like underrepresented groups that they feel better using chat instead of being in meetings because they have their time to give their opinion, and they don't have to fight
Mm.
for time to speak. Also, everyone can read everything, and everything seems the same. It's not like someone is speaking better because they are like, I don't know, have better voice or whatever. So this is also some aspect to consider.
Mhm.
But I think the most important thing is starting with yourself. So if you think about a meeting, then think, do I need this meeting at all? Maybe I just need to call one person, ask them, and take a decision. Do I need all of these people in this room? This is also some joke we have sometimes. It's like if you ask for a budget to do something with your project and you ask for money, you always get like, oh, we don't have this much budget. But then you call a meeting when there are like 15 people who are highly paid, and if you count how much money this 1 hour meeting costs, this is huge amount of money usually.
That's a good
So
perspective.
maybe yeah. So this is also important if you have a tendency to like ask people, because we are always doing that. maybe stop doing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And how about making sure that your meetings are effective, like agenda up front, and what are some other tips that you might have about that?
Yeah, like agenda is one thing. It really, I'd love to say that if you have agenda and some questions sent before, it helps a lot. But the tricky part is to make sure people also read that, because this really helps, because if everyone reads what you sent before, then the meeting, even if you need it, will be like 10 minutes
Right.
instead of half an hour. But another thing is, even if you have an agenda just for yourself, this is super helpful if you stick to it. so so this all goes to little self-discipline, and also I think maybe setting this also depends on what culture you have, because in some companies it's like this is obvious that we stick to agenda, and in some it's like we just started, no one knows how to do that. You're not used to interrupting people who are more senior than you. So you can always start like saying, okay, I want this meeting to be super brief. Here's our agenda, and I will be trying to do my best to make this super fast. So I may interrupt you if you're like changing subject. Just make people so
Mm,
they can expect what happens. This may
right.
be helpful in places where you're like new to making these meetings better.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you expect that you might be interrupted or you need to stick to it,
There are also
it's
some
easier
funny
to do
ways of,
that.
of things that we used. For example, with one of my first teams, I brought it from some, I think it was some Scrum training. So we had, how do you call that? Like toy animals that you put on your finger,
Uh-huh.
like for kids, and everyone had one.
Mhm.
And we had a rule that if one person is putting up this animal, then you have a sign that you're like going away from the subject. But if there are two people showing that, it means you should stop. And it was nice because it was a little fun, but it was not invasive, so no one felt like threatened. But also it was easier to do if you felt like we're losing the topic. So I just put my little panda up there so you can see. And then other people started thinking, oh, really? Yeah, I don't want to listen to that. So I put my little turtle up there. And it was really like funny, but very effective for my team. Like probably not everywhere you can use that, but
No,
it
but it's
was really
very
nice.
interesting, especially in development teams where people are more friendly and
Yeah,
yeah.
like you can look for some ways that make people easier, like make it easier for people to interrupt when they feel it's not good to continue this topic, for example. You can set up rules if there is, for example, if you have like a longer meeting, I know with many stakeholders who come from different teams, different backgrounds, you can have rules per this meeting that are even on a wall if it's in person or somewhere on a virtual board when you're online, that if you want something, it will happen this way. And when everyone knows the rules, even if they don't want them, they have to accept their exist.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's, I think, very helpful. I mean, I'm also finding it insightful. I wanted to ask, in addition to, we mentioned in terms of productivity and
Yep.
for people who are just jumping into an engineering lead role. So one thing you emphasized before was that it's best to focus only on managing instead of splitting your focus between managing and hands-on work, whether it's development or whatever else. Some people aren't in a situation to do that, so I'd like to talk maybe a bit from your perspective in the time when you try to split your work, some productivity tips or how to manage that. And apart from it, what are some other things that you might share for people about managing their own time as managers?
Okay, so I think the general tips would be the same, no matter if you have to split this time between engineering and management tasks, or you just have a lot of strictly managerial tasks to do. So there are different approaches. One is like you can try with days and dedicate every day for some particular part of your time. And if you have to contribute to technical part, you can always have like, I don't know, 2 days that you're generally engineer and 3 where you're a manager. Of course, there will be some exceptions, but starting with this in mind and telling everyone, okay, on Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm not there. I'm just coding. Leave me alone. It may be helpful. So this is one way. Another way is you can work in blocks. So you can have it like in the mornings you do whatever works for you, because everyone has his or her own like rhythm of day. If you feel best working on some individual stuff in the morning, then try to block time then to work and have it done, and also have this feeling that you've accomplished something that you care most about. And then in the afternoon, maybe you can have your meetings, or you can have some more like divided time for different tasks. So this is another thing you can do. I think what I tried also sometimes was even changing week per week with topics that like that you one week you focus more on team aspects, and another week you focus more on, I don't know, project or company aspects, something like that. So these themes.
And you're still there for ad hoc meetings and coordination with the team, regardless of what you're focused on.
Yeah, of course. What also checking, or this is something that worked well, not only for me, I also helped many people with that, is checking your calendar frequently if you really need all the things that are there. And
Oh,
if
this
you
is a good
can,
one.
yeah, really, it's like when I started working at Intel, I was overwhelmed with some part of meetings because I was totally new, so I had really a lot of them. And it was hard to me to decide if I should go to this meeting or it's optional. It's not always super clear. And I started asking my manager, okay, do I need to go to this? Do I know to like every single meeting? What's that? Do I need to go to this? I have it like every week in my calendar, and it's because some of them are international, so they are out of normal hours that I work. So do I need to make special thing that I can attend that meeting, or it's not important? So this was my first round. Second round was, okay, do we need all those meetings going on? So this meeting, can we have it one in 2 weeks instead of once a week? And by asking those questions, I made some changes to meetings that were going on, like, for example, weekly for a couple of months, I think, or years, and we changed it to bi-weekly for like many people, like 30 people or 40 people
Nice.
around the globe. So this
So
asking
sometimes all you
questions.
need is ask.
Yeah. So also we had some issues with very tight time frame with one project. So, and there were two engineers working on that, and they were complaining they have no time because they have too many meetings. So, okay, let's have a call and we'll look at your calendar. Tell me what the meetings are. I was like, this one, I think you don't have to do that. This one, do you need it, or they need you to be there? Ask them. Maybe you don't need to be there. This one, maybe you don't need to be there every time. Just let them know if they need you, they can call you in, but you don't go there like every 2 weeks.
Right.
So what? And I helped this way a couple of my people in my team to have a little more room for work. And also grouping meetings. For example, if you have some meetings that you have to have, but you like, sometimes it's like you have one at 10 and then at 12, and what do you do in between when you're an engineer? It's
Right.
really hard to focus. So try to group those meetings. The same is with like you're even a manager and you have one-on-ones. So maybe it may work for you best to have them like one by one. Just don't forget breaks, please. You will need them really. Yeah.
Yes, you
So
do like 2 days of one-on-ones, right?
yeah. Uh, just what I mean is, I always like try to put at least like 10 minutes break between meetings just before,
Mhm.
especially with one-on-ones. It's like sometimes you finish earlier, but sometimes you need this 5 minutes more, and you don't want to be always moving all the
Right.
further meetings. So this is one thing. Another, if you had like an intensive one-on-one, you want to have a break before another one because otherwise your brain can explode.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, with this, especially when you're sharing really different kind of stuff, because one thing if you're still working in this hands-on engineering work and this manager, but then if you go to other levels, you start having another responsibilities. You can become someone working with executives, and you will have some more executive part of work, and you still have your team. So these also are very different contexts. So again, you will need to find a way to have time for this context to be like in good shape and not shattered because you will never be able to look at the whole picture. So I
Right.
think it's good to find something that works for you because for example, I know also people who don't like to work too long on the same thing. That's rare.
That's probably
But this happens and this means that you also should find some way to like keep yourself engaged. So if you need every day to have a couple of different things, do it. It will
right.
be good for you. If you
Yeah,
need
that's a good point.
focus, do everything you can to have focus. If you have no meetings day in a company, this is great, and please guard them. Because everyone needs that. Not only individual contributors need no meetings time. Also,
Right.
managers need no meetings time.
Right. We talked about one-on-ones. I mean, we mentioned them a couple of
Mm.
times. What are some things that you do to make sure you have effective one-on-ones or you are supporting people? And now we talked a bit about, difficult times.
Mm.
How are you addressing that in a one-on-one?
Uh, so my general approach is that one-on-one is for the person from my team, not for me. Because if I want something from someone, I always can have a meeting with them just ad hoc. So one-on-one is like a safe place. I like to have them with schedule. So every 2 weeks, this is my go-to schedule. Because there are some people who will never come up to you to say something is not okay if they don't have to. This is a safe slot. Like this is a slot when I sit and say, this is time for you. If you want whatever you want, we can do here during this time. I really try not to move those one-on-ones, and if I move them, I try to move them and not completely delete them from my
Mm-hmm.
calendar. So this is also important so that people feel safe. This time exists. And then it depends with whom you work. I like to have quite a lot of questions for my first one-on-one with new person, or when I am new, like when I joined the team and I was a new manager, I did that with all my people, so that we have a lot of things covered, that I get to know this person better, and I ask usually about the way they work, what they need from the one-on-ones, how they like to communicate, and so on. And then I use that knowledge to make the one-on-ones more suited for that person. But I really try to make people accountable for this time. So My idea is they come with their questions, their concerns, whatever they want. And of course, sometimes I will be also asking them. But I really like the idea that this is the team, like the person who works in your team is the owner of the one-on-one. Sometimes, of course, you feel something is not okay. Like now we have a very difficult topic, and it would be great to find a way to ask your people how they feel about that without violating their like privacy too much. But sometimes it's like you feel something is not okay, and depending on how well you know the person, you should try at least to ask. If you're open from the very beginning, they will also feel like they can tell you, I don't want to talk about that. And then you just respect it. Mm, what else?
Have you had occasions where people don't want to come to one-on-ones?
Mm. Yeah, like all that I already said is like a theory for engaged people. Yes, that if you have teammates who want and they want to use the time, that there are many different ways you can work with them. But of course, sometimes we have people who don't like one-on-ones. They think they are useless, or they are a waste of time, or they don't want to talk to you and answer your questions. And depending on how intense this is, you can do different things. Like I really had once an engineer who was always like he was coming to all the meetings. We were talking in person, and I was because I tried not to bring computer to this one-on-one, so I had a notepad, and he was always asking, "Oh, so what do you have in your notepad for today?" Like he was joking, but it was not nice. It was like, I really think we are wasting my time. And with him, for example, I work this way that after a couple of meetings like that, I started asking him really difficult questions. Like
For example?
the questions that he had to think about before he answered, and that were really meaningful for our relationship and for the team. And I won't tell you that it miraculously like changed his attitude, but sometimes you need to show the person why these meetings are needed. Also, I think you should have some kind of, I know I always say that I think this is place for you to grow. And also, of course, it depends what's your attitude to employing people and keeping them in the team. But uh, like as an engineering manager, you also have some expectations toward people, and one of mine is you need to be able and be eager to grow. And if you don't want to grow in any way, then we have to deal with that problem and call it a problem. So not making use of one-on-ones would be for me one of like
Mhm.
aspects of this problem, that you don't want to use this space to grow. Of course, the first thing you should do is ask yourself as a manager, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong with this
Am
person.
I really
Maybe they don't
wasting
trust me.
his time?
Yeah, because maybe we didn't build this trust, this relationship, or maybe they have bad experiences from the past. This is quite common, that people have this experience about one-on-ones with previous managers, that they were boring and just status meetings. And one-on-ones are not for status. Like you have project meetings for status. If you need to work with person one-on-one on their status because, I don't know, you have some crisis or something, do it somewhere else, not in this one-on-one time. This one-on-one time should be for meaningful conversation about their growth, their development, their problems.
Right.
Yeah,
I
sometimes
assume you
people,
don't have
yeah,
a fixed agenda for them, or you do? Like, what are some things that you
depends.
want to go
But
through?
yeah, usually I don't. Like I have some questions that I asked almost all the time because they are useful, but I also try to change them. There's also a super great tip I heard in one talk by Kevin Goldsmith. I really recommend his talks. He's amazing. So he said, if people are not talking too much in your one-on-ones, this means you are talking too much. And he said, one advice I have is shut up and listen. And he literally told us a story when with one of his engineers, he really was like, okay, how are you doing? And he was saying, oh, okay. And there was this pause. So Kevin started talking. And one day he was like, no, I won't talk anything. He was just, how are you? This person answered okay, and he went silent. I was silent for 2 minutes, and then he started to talk.
The other person, or he's
Yeah, the
sharing?
other person. So sometimes you need to give people space to gather their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm talking a lot, and this is also my problem. So I start answering a question before person asks them till the end. So this is one thing also that can be making people not want to talk to you if you talk too much.
Mm. These are all excellent points. I'd like to. We have two more questions I want to go through, and then we have a lot coming up from the audience. So maybe we can make this to a bit more brief. One thing which is a pain for every engineering team, and I heard that people consider you a pro in that, is estimations.
Yep.
So what are like, and this would probably focus more actually on engineering managers about how to support their team, and individuals who are struggling with it, how to get better in estimating their work.
So generally, like estimating is a river of a topic. I mean, I've
I should
given a
invite you
couple.
again then.
Yeah, I've given a couple of talks on that, but they also don't cover like everything. But what I found is most important for managers, especially, is to share knowledge. So make sure people who you're estimating with know what you already know. Because we usually think everyone knows what we know,
Yeah.
but especially in estimations, it's not that way. So if you're getting some estimations from your team, ask them, okay, what did you take into account? Did you take this and that and that? What buffers did you add? And they're like, what buffers? No, we have to do it as soon as possible. My favorite thing is also priorities. So because we can have like, okay, time is our top priority. But then if you think more, it's like, okay, but do we want to sacrifice quality? And if yes, to what extent? So priorities are like totally super important in estimating. Generally, it's like we had an experiment in some training about estimating, and it showed us that people are terrible in estimating. Like humans are
Surprise.
terrible. Surprise, surprise. So never expect too much. Like I would like to love in a world where we don't need them, but it's always something we need. So one thing is how to talk about them, and second, how to get better. And you get better when you make it thoughtful, like you estimate and you see, okay, this worked, this didn't work, next time we try to do it a little better.
Right.
Like iterative approach helps a lot. Also, what resonates with most of teams is remember that estimations are not declarations. And this is super important to make sure all stakeholders know that if we are estimating, we are guessing, like really guessing. And when we have to agree on a deadline that we want to keep, then we should add much more, like spend more time on estimating or add more buffers. Yeah, so this is quite tricky.
Maybe we can share a link to your talks with the audience in the
Yeah,
email
sure,
afterwards.
of course.
Yeah, we can do that for everyone who wants to dig more into this topic.
Mm,
And final question, which is a bit related to how we started this conversation, and it's about, again, supporting your team in need. You mentioned you're on medical leave right now, and before that, I mean, once you gave birth, you had amazing support from your managers. You told me that when
yeah.
preparing. From my perspective, I'm also on maternity leave right now, but before going into it myself, I wasn't really aware of the needs of people who have little kids or during their pregnancy and whatever they're going through on personal level. What are some things, in addition to what we discussed at the beginning, that you'd like to emphasize here? Like, how should we get better into supporting people, like with their private things?
hmm So maybe I will focus on pregnancy because I have some examples on that, but you can use it as just an example. Like, I think pregnancy is a time of extreme vulnerability, and this is the same with some other personal stuffs. Like, I don't know, someone dies from the very, very close family or something like that. Just pregnancy is different because it lasts longer and can be very different. So, as you mentioned, you didn't know how it is before it happened to you, but what's tricky, you won't know how it is to uh, all the other people because every pregnancy is different. So my first advice for anyone dealing with a pregnant person would be, you, assume you know nothing about the state, because like, every pregnancy is different, every person has different approach, and also you don't know what's the history behind. So, for example, how long this person worked to be in that pregnancy, or how difficult it is for that person to decide what's next. And like, in addition to all this hormonal stress that pregnancy is for the organism, you have all the thoughts that are in your head. And I think the first moment that's the trickiest for a manager is when the person comes to you and says, I'm pregnant, and you have tons of questions in your head, but it's not the moment to ask those questions. At least not at the beginning. What you should say at the beginning is something supportive, like, I'm happy for you if you feel this is what you should say, or, oh, thank you for sharing that. What do you want to do next? Like, give this person space, because when they come to announce it, they already thought about this conversation a couple times before, and they are probably, even if a little, they are probably stressed about their future, the company future, the team future, and so on. So this support is something that you need a lot of empathy to do that, but, like, not the empathy the way, oh, my wife was pregnant, I know how it is. This is not the, the level that helps, because there are people who are able and can work through all of their pregnancy. There are people who can't, and the tricky thing is, you usually don't want to announce it too early, but the first months are the worst. So you have a person who's struggling to work for a couple of weeks before they tell you. What can be supportive is working with them to make it, like, safe for them to miss some part of work, for example, because for all of you probably it's better that this person stays as long as they feel comfortable. When I worked in my previous pregnancy in the office, my boss gave me a key to a room when I could go and take a nap during the day. It was super helpful. And of course, when we are working remotely, I don't need the key because I have a sofa in my room, but I need permission. Like this time from my manager, I had all support I needed. We worked together on how to do it best, that I can stay as long as possible, despite feeling really bad. Who can I delegate some of my tasks to so that I don't have to focus on everything, because it was like, for me, it was quite impossible to manage. But we wanted that I stay as long as possible for my team and to organize stuff before I leave. And it was really helpful, and I think it worked well for as well as it could go for everyone engaged in this situation. So this support and this feeling that it's okay that you can't do everything, it, it really makes you want to be there, want to contribute. So this is very helpful. But
Right.
again, I will repeat that because it's super important that that you don't think that you know, even if you're a woman and you're after 4 pregnancies, all your pregnancies were different than the pregnancy of a person who's talking to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the bottom line is basically to, again, listen, understand their needs, and be as supportive as possible about not being as productive as they were before.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to our audience questions. What is your book recommendation to start as engineering manager? I think you mentioned Manager's Path.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Mm, At the moment, nothing comes to my mind, but I can also look for some that I read before, and I can like send you a list together with my talks. We can share some good resources because I have some.
Sure.
But yeah, this Manager's Path is really like a nice thing, and it's short and really handy.
Good place to start, and then
Yep.
I guess they'll pile up afterwards. Having completely left, sorry, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add that apart from books, there is a great community with a lot of talks and articles. It's called the Lead Dev conference. Started in London, but now there are conferences in other parts of the world, and it's my main point of inspiration. They are amazing people there. So, and you can find everything for beginners, for CTOs, for like everyone. Is really, really, really great.
Great. Okay, here we are. Having completely left your hands-on engineering role, how do you keep yourself on top of technological changes and updates?
You don't have to. I mean, this is important thing. At least this works for me. Of course, it depends on what company you work in and how your work as a manager looks like. So at the moment, I work in such a way that I don't have to be on top of all technical news and know everything, because your role is to manage people to be experts and not to be expert yourself. And you don't have to be an expert to make people experts. So if this is of your interest, of course you can do it, but more like a hobby. But if you're because this may be needed if you're a technical manager. I'm not sure. It depends how this role is defined in your organization. So then I would say maybe stay in code reviews, for example, but don't code yourself. This is one approach I heard people use for some time.
I think a lot of people, like the distinction between engineering manager and staff engineer, for example, which is coming up lately, is still blurry for people. Like oftentimes when you hear engineering manager, you think, oh, this person is designing architecture, code design, and things like that. Well, it's actually more focused on managing people, and then there are architects and other people who are
Yeah.
focused on the technical part. So again, when thinking about whether to jump into a career as engineering manager, this is something for people to consider too. Like the technical, if you are into that high level technical stuff, that engineering management might not be the role that you're seeking.
Yeah, that's it.
Next question. Oh, this is a good one. Would you say that not being constantly coding or involved in tech stuff affected other engineers' perception of you in terms of respecting your decision and second guessing you or stuff like that?
Like in my case, it wasn't this kind. It was rather that they felt more freedom in their technical decisions, and they felt more freedom in asking me for help in some managerial support. But we had a small team, and yeah, maybe this. But the big problem when you're a manager and you still do the hands-on job is you start to have like more authority, and you sometimes use it in technical discussion when you shouldn't, because you're not automatically a better expert in these technical parts.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I've had an experience when a person snapped at their manager because she wasn't technical, and there was a heated discussion. So I saw where he's coming from, and I was looking forward to your point of view on this.
This also is, I find it really helpful not to be too technical in this managerial stuffs, for two reasons. First is I can ask questions that would seem dumb for people who are super pros in this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I like them because they make people think other way. And sometimes I ask those questions even if I technically know what people would like to answer. But if I'm not pretending I'm an expert, I can ask those questions. We would love to live in a place where like everyone can ask dumb questions. This is other thing. So yeah, this is helpful that you can ask questions if you're not a pro. And another thing is people don't feel threatened by your remarks so much. If you have like high egos sometimes in a team, it also can be useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. There are a lot of other questions, but we don't have time, and the stream will stop automatically. So maybe we can make a follow-up considering everything else that wasn't answered. Dominika, just from your perspective, anything else you'd like to add that we didn't touch upon, or just a wrap up?
I think we covered so many things that it's hard for me to think about something else. Yeah, this is so broad topic that we could probably talk another hour.
True.
Yeah, maybe one thing like to keep in your heart is to be authentic. So don't try to be some other manager, because you're like the only one, and you can get some inspiration, but being authentic makes people trust you more.
That's an amazing way to end this wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I think it was very insightful. A lot of good topics, and the answers you had. I mean, I think that people got a lot from it. Thanks to everyone who attended. We will see each other again next month. In the meantime, make sure to follow us, subscribe on YouTube, because this talk will go there in the next days. Thanks again, and enjoy your day.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye. Have a nice evening.